of violence in Turkey as four separate attacks hit from Istanbul to the southeast, blamed on Kurdish and Marxist radicals. Controversy over force feeding in Israel. Doctors refused to force feed Palestinian prisoner Mohammed Allan on a prolonged hunger strike as he's moved to a hospital. I-24 News talks to his parents. After a peaceful day of protest in Ferguson, Missouri to remember Michael Brown, overnight violence breaks out as gunfire is exchanged with one man in critical condition.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the News Today. 24 hours of terror in Turkey as four separate attacks shook the country from Istanbul to the southeast. At least 6 members of Turkish security forces were killed in a series of attacks amid rising tension between the government and Kurdish militants. One of the targets for the Kurdish rebels today was the U.S. consulate in Turkey's largest city, attacked by 2 women looking for retaliation for the attack in Suruç. Ayman Siksik has more.
A wave of security attacks across Turkey, with assaults in the country's largest city, Istanbul, and in the southeast of the country. Istanbul. 2 Kurdish female fighters opened fire outside the U.S. consulate building in the city, hours after an overnight bomb attack on a police station injured 3 police officers and 7 civilians. No one was hurt in the consulate incident. Turkish police stormed a building in Istanbul where suspects involved in the blast were believed to be hiding. One of the 2 women was captured, and eyewitnesses said she had made her motive clear: revenge.
The policeman was shouting, "Drop your bag, drop your bag." And the woman was saying, "I will not surrender. I came to avenge the attack in Suruç. I will avenge the attack in Suruç." The police warned her again, "Drop your bag or we will have to shoot you." And the woman said, "Shoot."
The Kurdish town of Suruç last month saw a suspected Islamic State suicide bombing, killing at least 30 people, mostly students. Sirnak, in the southeastern region of the country, a roadside bomb killed 4 police officers and 1 soldier was killed when Kurdish militants opened fire on a helicopter in a district nearby. At least 7 other soldiers were wounded in the attack. In retaliation for the attack on the military helicopter, Turkish helicopters bombed targets of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK. Tensions between Turkey and the PKK had risen since Turkey began an air campaign against Islamic State targets outside its borders last month. The PKK claims Turkey is deliberately targeting Kurdish rebels as well, a charge Ankara denies. PKK leaders accuse Turkey of trying to protect IS by attacking Kurdish fighters. On Sunday, the U.S. military sent 6 F-16 fighter jets to one of Turkey's air bases in preparation for an escalation of the conflict along the country's border with Syria.
And joining me here in the studio via Skype is journalist Laura Wells in Bodrum, Turkey. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Good evening, thank you.
And also Ali Waked here with me here in the studio. But first we will start with you, Laura. Laura, let's talk a little bit about the DHKP and what they have against the United States.
Well, it's a Marxist-Leninist group, and it wants Turkey to be completely cut all ties from the United States or any Western group, or basically any non-communist. They're trying to create some sort of anarchy in the meantime to free Turkey of all of its ties to non-communist states. So
what is standing behind it? What is standing behind why to free Turkey from all the connection? What, to isolate Turkey at the end?
I don't think there's any connection between the HKPC and ISIS, for instance. They just happen to be 2 of the targets of the recent raids in Turkey. We've been dealing with DHKPC attacks for as long as I can remember. They're sporadic, but they certainly do happen. And they did claim the U.S. Embassy attack today, and certainly one of the women that they have caught Hatice Ashok, she was just released from prison actually 1 month ago for another attack on a police station.
You know, before I'm taking you exactly in this point about the woman who became like a really big, let's say, women martyrs or big factor in this fight, what is happening right now in Turkey? Because it seems that Turkey was standing on, you know, we can say on a single hair before it's starting to break. How come?
That's a great question. There was certainly a snowball effect after the Suruç bombing that killed 33 back on July 20th. Basically, that's when PKK said, you're not protecting Kurds. You allowed this to happen. There have been some media reports that the government did know there would be some sort of attack in the area at that time. But basically, Kurds do not feel that they're protected or they even have any empathy with the politicians who are making decisions right now. PKK does not represent all Kurds by any means, but certainly it's the most vociferous and active group in Turkey.
And of course, more, let's say, the active group against IS. But I want to take you to this part about how come women are taking such a significant part in the war this time.
Well, if you look at DHKPC, they've always had these female assailants. They usually pick on people who are mentally ill or troubled. If you're talking about PKK, that's generally a communist and egalitarian group. So they believe in bringing in women for the fight. So that's also been a tradition of theirs. So the main thing that they share is communism and egalitarianism. Certainly, I think it's one thing that most security forces will not look at women and think that they're potential assailants. So I guess they do have that going for them when they use these females.
Yes, Laura Wales, thank you very much for this. Ali, you know, how come, and I want to understand right now what is happening, because how come that the fight against IS brought this clash back on track between Turkey and the PKK?
Because it is not an innocent fight against the Islamic State, Lucy. We said from the very beginning that the Turkish government is using this war against the Islamic State in order to stop the gains that were marked by the Kurds in the region, whether it is the Peshmerga or the popular committees or the PKK. The Kurds want to fight the Islamic State, but their eyes are towards the Kurds and the possibility that the gains of the Kurds will not turn into a demand to a growing autonomy or even to an independence. This is the big fear of Turkey.
Logically, what Turkey is doing now is it's going to benefit from it in the future, because from what we're seeing now, the fact that Turkey is going against the PKK, going against the force that it is fighting and actually managing to fight IS, is making Turkey to go down the hill.
I'm not sure, Lucy. History and politics always goes with the strong side, and I think at the end of the day, if the Turks will contribute to the coalition, the international community, in my opinion, will revise and restudy its position vis-à-vis the Kurds, and once again, it will be the Kurds that will pay the price. The Kurds that until weeks from now were supported by most of the international community that expressed sympathy towards their demands and the right to live in an independent entity, or at least in a growing autonomy entity, will see themselves in an equation between them and between the Turks.
And what just Laura said, because you're saying that the Kurds will again find themselves between two sides.
This is a scenario in which they will pay the price, yes.
Because what Laura said is that basically not all Kurds support PKK, but because of the fight of PKK, all the Kurds are paying the price.
But most of the Kurds, like the PKK, said things they are not enough protected by the government, they are not enough represented by the government. This is why, and we covered here deeply the Turkish elections, this is why the Kurds decided to present themselves as a bloc, as a group, as a party in the elections and have significant results. Lucy, we should pay attention to one thing. In the history, in 1923, and I go back to the history, Turkey, sanctioned by its participation in the war side by side with the German, were paid Kirkuk and Mosul in north of Iraq. And it was a 100-year sanction. This 100-year will come to its end in 2023. And the Turks are, and this is the oil part of Iraq, and the Kurds are waiting to see the situation until 2023. They want the stability to maintain. They don't want any dynamic to take place in the Kurds issue, so they will be in a position to demand to be part of the arrangement regarding Kirkuk and Mosul, if not demanding to have back Kirkuk and Mosul. And this is something we are taking for granted, that the Kurds in north of Iraq will have their independent entity. The Turkish have very different perspective to what should be the situation of the Kurds from now until 2023. And in general, they don't believe that the Kurds have the right for any independent entity.
You gave me a good class in history. Thank you very, very much, Ali. Thank you. And we're going back here to this region in Israel. Controversy over a new force-feeding law continues. Doctors have refused to force-feed Palestinian prisoner Muhammad Allan, who's now been moved to an Ashkelon hospital. Allan, allegedly part of the Islamic Jihad, has been on strike for over 50 days. I-24 News correspondent Mohammed Al-Qasim spoke to his parents.
Palestinian prisoner Muhammad Allan was transferred early today from Soroka Hospital in Beersheba to Barzilai Hospital in Ashkelon, in a move seen by his family as one step closer to force-feeding him. Allan has been on hunger strike for over 54 days. He has refused medicine or vitamins, accepting only water. His father, Nasser Allan, said Israel arrested his son last year and placed him under administrative detention for 2 6-month periods. Israel claims that Allan is a member of Islamic Jihad. For Palestinian prisoners arrested under administrative detention law, a hunger strike is the only non-violent path they can take to protest their treatment and denial of due process. But by force-feeding hunger-striking Palestinian prisoners, the Israeli government hopes it will stop other prisoners from following suit. Israel is facing mounting international pressure for its practice of administrative detention. A prisoner's death by hunger strike stands to make that pressure far worse. Israel's Medical Association, which considers force-feeding a form of torture and medically risky, has urged doctors not to abide by the law. And indeed, Dr. Levy, head of the Barzilai Medical Center, said his staff are not considering force-feeding Allan.
Respect all the laws and all the things that allows the patient to decide about himself. We act according to the patient rights and the law that keeps the autonomy of the patient to his body.
Allan's mother could only hope that doctors in Barzilai Hospital take her son's wishes into consideration.
Whatever God wants to happen will happen. I hope they won't force-feed him.
Some Arab members of the Israeli parliament turned up at the hospital to voice their support for Allan's decision and warned the Israeli government not to force-feed him.
We've been in touch with the Israeli Doctors Association, with Dr. Edelman, the head of the association, as well as the director of the Barzilai Hospital. We, the Arab members of the Knesset, warned of force-feeding him.
Allan is one of 414 Palestinians in administrative detention. His hunger strike is the longest among more than 180 Palestinian prisoners in administrative detention who are choosing to do the same. Whatever comes out of his case could have major implications for them as well.
And with me to understand a little bit more about the recent situation is correspondent and analyst Mohammed Al-Qasim. Good evening. Thank you very much for being here in the studio. Where does the situation stand now? He's refusing to eat. He's in the hospital, and the doctors are refusing to force-feed him. Where does it stand now?
So far, the hospital and the doctors will not force-feeding him. The doctor, the director at the Barzilai Hospital in Ashkelon said that unless prisoner Muhammad Allan goes into coma or loses conscious, that's when they will consider not force feeding him, they will consider reviving his life and saving his life. But until this moment, no decision has been made to force feeding him. In fact, they asked him this morning when he arrived from Soraka Hospital from Beersheba, would you like us to take a do blood test on you? And he refused. The only thing he requested is to check his ear, and that they did.
So what, he wants to die? This is what the parents are saying? He wants to, like, either he is going out of the prison or he's dying?
Well, here's the situation, Lucy. He was arrested last year under administrative detention law, and he spent 2 6-month periods so far without being
seeing a judge.
So for him and other Palestinian prisoners who choose to take a hunger strike path, this is the only way for them to either leave prison or die.
You know, I'm trying to understand what will be the consequences of this specific situation if he will die, because the international community is already outraged about this situation.
That's true.
Including the administrative detention.
Well, implications goes beyond Israel. It will affect also the West Bank and Palestinians in the West Bank. On the first hand, Israel is facing international pressure from the United Nations, from Europe, from the US and other places over not only administrative detention law, that it should be reviewed and maybe just omitted and abolished, but also over Palestinian prisoners who go on hunger strike and they may die. On the other hand, just in case any of these prisoners loses their lives, implications in the West Bank are unknown. It could be the start, the spark that starts a third intifada.
Let's try to think together how this situation, him dying, or all these hunger strikes, are actually helping the Palestinian Authority in its fight right now.
To be quite honest with you, I think it's on the contrary. I spoke on this case for a while, and I spoke to Palestinians on this matter, and they all say that it's shameful on the Palestinian Authority that it's not really taking a front stand on cases like Muhammad Allan or Khadr Adnan, which we covered firsthand. Today, I spoke with a couple of Palestinians at the hospital who said Arab members of the Israeli Knesset have done far more than the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah for these prisoners.
So where does it put right now? It takes us back to the maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks discussion that we had together. Is that this puts again the Palestinian Authority in a really low position in front of Fatah, in front of Hamas, which means that for the Palestinians, they understand that maybe Israel understands only force.
Keep in mind that it's claimed that Israel claims that this prisoner, Muhammad Allan, belongs to the Al-Jihad al-Islami. And we've seen when Khadr Adnan came out of prison a month or so ago, the PA did not attend his release on a high level at all. In fact, they didn't even wait for him as early as he was released. And he is considered also a Jihad Islami member. Basically, here's what the PA is saying. If you are not a Fatah member or a Palestinian Authority loyalist, we're not really going to intervene. And that really puts it in a very embarrassing way in front of the Palestinian public.
And even that, with this, let's say, stand, Israel doesn't see this as a good move towards it. But again,
indeed,
the Palestinian Authority is the one to blame. Well, Mohammed Al-Qasim, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
2 Israeli Druze from the northern town of Majd al-Shams have been charged with the murder of a wounded Syrian militant as he was being transferred to an Israeli hospital last month. Matthias Imbar has the details.
On June 22nd, these images shocked Israel. It happened in Neve Ativ on the border between Israel and Syria. A massive gathering of young adults violently attacking 2 wounded Syrians being transported in an Israeli army ambulance. In spite of warning shots fired by soldiers, the mob of pro-Assad Druze from the Golan kept on pushing. The wounded were forced out of the ambulance and dragged to the ground. They were then literally stoned and lynched using wood planks and iron bars. It lasted several long minutes until the mob was certain the 2 Syrians had died from their injuries. almost a month after the incident and after having interrogated more than 50 suspects. An Israeli court has indicted 2 people for the lynch. The first, Amal Abu Salah, aged 22, was the one seen in the video striking one of the wounded Syrians with a wooden plank. The second, 48-year-old Bashira Mahmoud, was accused of throwing stone blocks at the 2 victims. Druze from the Golan have always considered themselves as Syrian and for the most part have consistently supported Bashar al-Assad. According to the accused, the 2 wounded were part of the Jabhat al-Nusra organization, a jihadist group linked to al-Qaeda. As such, they were seen as potential targets. But for Israel, the 2 victims were only moderate rebels, and in fact, it was not the first time Israel had agreed to transport them for medical assistance. The tribunal at Nazareth has announced that the lynch is part of an ongoing investigation, and additional charges will be filed.
And with me right now here in the studio is defense and government analyst for Haaretz daily newspaper, Amir Oren. Good evening.
Evening, Lucy.
And also Iranian politics analyst, Mayor Javed Ansar. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
Before I will continue with you, I just want to give another note. Iran's Revolutionary Guards are also said to benefit from the Iran nuclear deal. Dozens of companies linked to the powerful military force will win sanctions relief under the deal. The IRGC could act like a gatekeeper for Western firms trying to break into Iran's economy. One such arm is Khatim al-Anbiya, controlling 812 affiliated companies and deemed by Washington as proliferators of weapons of mass destruction. And to understand what is happening right now here, I will start with you, Mayor. This that was obvious that one will benefit, some groups will also, maybe dangerous groups, will also benefit from the relief of sanctions.
Yes, I think this was done for the buy-in. If you want the Revolutionary Guard to back the deal, you need to remove some of these sanctions as kind of compensation. Khatam al-Anbiya is a giant, comparing to some other Iranian organizations and companies in terms of infrastructure, building dams, building pipelines. They're an absolute huge conglomerate. And I think this was their way of, trying to make them more malleable and not to object to some of the compromises that Ayatollah Khamenei made. Let's not forget that the deal itself, 3 red lines by Khamenei have been crossed in this. So this is kind of like to get their buy-in for the deal.
You must give incentives to every stakeholder in the deal, in the States, in Iran, around the world. Everyone must benefit somehow.
It's not, it's not pleasant, but it has to be done.
Not only that, everyone, it's like everybody right now is saying, oh, you see, Iran is already showing its real face. Iran was never actually innocent. Iran was never hiding its intentions. So how, what? Again,
no, not on the nuclear front. You're right about all the other fronts, but this was not part of the deal. It was obvious that this deal has to do with the nuclear weapon program. That's it. All the other stuff, there is the United Nations, there is interstate commerce, business as usual, or business back to usual, but and nobody ever expected Iran to turn into Andorra.
Before I will ask you when the people of Iran are going to start benefiting from actually the relief of the sanctions, some opposition to Benjamin Netanyahu. You released today an article saying that some really high-ranked officials are saying that this deal is actually good, but they're afraid to say it out loud because what?
You know the old Sherlock Holmes deal about the dog that didn't bark. You always hear intelligence chiefs in Israel, Mossad, military intelligence, others, speak out about the issues of the day. They warn, they analyze, they assess, publicly too. Or they go to the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. And lo and behold, for the last month, there was an earth-shattering event, the July 14th deal in Vienna, and you don't hear one squawk out of the intelligence people. Why? Do they all think exactly like Benjamin Netanyahu? Is this some coincidence that all of a sudden all of these free-thinking professionals have clammed up? No, this is because Netanyahu doesn't want any crack in the wall when he approaches Congress. He wants Washington to believe
But
falsely.
this crack already started just 2 weeks ago when a lot of army officials and military men that signed a petition.
This is not enough, because retired military, retired security chiefs have also supported Netanyahu's opponents in the elections, and he can always say, well, they are not privy to the secret material which I see. It's very good for them to have been many years ago in position. Now, I know all the secrets, yes, but also the intelligence chiefs know all of the secrets, and one of the secrets they know is Netanyahu himself has become a problem. And when they have to assess the impact of the Netanyahu versus Obama war, which is what is taking place, on Israel's position, they have to boldly come out and say, this is bad for the country.
Yeah, but they're not saying it, that this is bad for the country, and they are on the way risking the relationship between Israel and the United States, and maybe Israel and the entire international community.
Yes, because there are three different issues here. One is the Iran deal. Is it good, bad, acceptable? On balance, they think in intelligence that it's okay. Of course, they would have liked to improve it. They know that Iran wasn't going to capitulate. So on balance, if they have to vote yes or no, yes. The other thing is the U.S.-Israeli relationship, which is the cornerstone of Israel's strategic position. Of course, they think that it's very bad what is happening. And the third part is that the United States has been offering Israel unprecedented exposure to raw materials of the collection assets that only the United States has in space.
Just be like relaxed.
Yes, you may tie into our intelligence blood circulation and get it and find for yourself. And Netanyahu ordered the intelligence community to say no.
How would the Iranians? Okay, you are surprised. You are like, you're angry.
No, because when Yitzhak Shamir, when we're being fired from Saddam Hussein, even Yitzhak Shamir, who was one of the chief Likud people, he accepted not to fire and to get, because the relationship with the United States was so important. The Iran issue is important, but the fact that the Prime Minister is only hurting our relationship with the United States over this, I think this is something that for us to worry about as citizens of Israel. And of course, as Amir's recent article shows, there are parts of the Israeli intelligence community who don't share the Prime Minister's view.
And the American Jewish community too, which is also going to be hurt by this dual loyalty charge.
I started asking you about when the relief of the sanctions, the people of Iran will start benefiting from it, and not only the officials, not only the government.
I think a lot of the people in Iran are not. They don't think it's going to come to them immediately. I think people have. This is why the Tehran Stock Exchange has actually been going down after the deal. It went up, then it went down. The price of gold has been going up because people are becoming nervous, or the rial has not been doing so well. People are aware that sanctions is one of the problems. The much bigger problem in Iran is the cancer of corruption, and the incredible monopoly power with some of the state economic corporations have, so they're not being very optimistic.
Good. So nobody's optimistic.
Welcome to the Middle East.
Have more than a month until the vote in Congress. Many surprises to come.
Many surprises to come. Whoa. Okay. 2 minutes, and not a surprise, the second part of the news today is here, so 2 minutes, and I'll be back. Violence in Turkey as 4 separate attacks hit from Istanbul to the southeast, blamed on Kurdish and Marxist radicals. Controversy over force feeding in Israel. Doctors refused to force feed Palestinian prisoner Mohammed Allan on a prolonged hunger strike as he's moved to a hospital. After a peaceful day of protest in Ferguson, Missouri to remember Michael Brown, overnight violence breaks out as gunfire is exchanged with 1 man in critical condition. Welcome back to the news today. After a day of peaceful protest in honor of Michael Brown, the streets of Ferguson, Missouri turned violent overnight when an exchange of gunfire and 1 man critically wounded. War Shapiro has the latest.
outrage returned to the streets of Ferguson, Missouri, with exchanges of fire and police critically wounding a man who they say fired at them Sunday night.
The suspect engages them with gunfire almost right at the grill of the car. Strike the hood. I don't know if you've seen pictures of it yet. 3 or 4 times. Strike the windshield, I think 4 or 5 times. The plainclothes detectives return fire from the inside of the van, but they don't know if they hit him or not. They don't really know.
The St. Louis Post-Dispatch reported that a man named Tyrone Harris Sr. identified the victim as his 18-year-old son, Tyrone Harris Jr., but there has not yet been official confirmation of this report. The incident took place at a protest marking the first anniversary of the death of Michael Brown, a young African-American who was shot and killed by police officer Darren Wilson while unarmed. In November, a grand jury decided not to prosecute Wilson, adding more fuel to the fire.
But, you know, historically, this country has a lot of targets on, you know, the backs of people of color, and something really needs to happen and change needs to come. I can only bring my voice and my presence, so that's why I'm here.
Last Saturday, Michael Brown Sr. led a peaceful rally to commemorate the loss of his son.
To be honest, I wouldn't even care if they was listening or not. I just want to get on the TV and let them know I'm not stopping.
You're not stopping. What does that
I'm
mean?
not stopping.
What does that mean?
A year after Brown's death, and following several more incidents involving the killing of young African Americans, racial tension in America is still high.
And as Ferguson, Missouri prepares tonight for more rallies, from ABC, joining me right now, Marcy Gonzalez is covering Ferguson today from New York. Good evening, Marcy.
Good evening, Lucy.
So, Marcy, what's the latest after the overnight violence?
Well, it all started yesterday as peaceful protests and marches. Of course, it was the first anniversary of the death of an unarmed teenager, Michael Brown, shot to death by a police officer in Ferguson 1 year ago. But then it quickly escalated into the evening. There was looting, there was violence, and there was a shooting that police now say started between 2 rival groups in a parking lot. Now, police say one person in that crowd then ran off, an 18-year-old man, and that's when they say that 18-year-old shot at a police vehicle that had 4 detectives inside. They say those detectives then got out of the vehicle, and that 18-year-old kept shooting at them. They say that's when shots were fired from police. They shot that teenager, and he is listed in critical condition today. Several officers were also injured throughout last night's violence. 2 were pepper sprayed, we're told, by protesters, and police say one officer was hit in the face by a rock.
Marcy, are there any concerns over further escalation at this point?
Well, there's really no way of knowing, but police are stepping up, putting extra patrols out today because more protests are planned for this afternoon.
Yes, Marcy Gonzalez, ABC News, thank you very, very much for this. And right now with me is Karen Abdul Malik, a.k.a. Queen Noor, president of the National Association of Black Storytellers. Good evening. Thank you very, very much for joining me.
Good evening. How are you?
Very good, thank you. So, Queen Noor, it's been, let's say, a really difficult night. And again, are you surprised that this is the reaction, that instead of going on, let's say, peaceful and peaceful protests to remember Michael Brown, this is the outcome, that at the end, again, Black African-American people are again clashing with white people in the United States?
Well, actually, what we're talking about is just an ongoing story, right? So, and there are peaceful protests that do go on, and there are people who are trying to tell the stories. The youth voice have risen in different ways, and they do speak, and there are other times. This is just what happened last night. As a matter of fact, I'm in Amherst, Massachusetts, in which I attended a show by one of our storytellers, Onawumi Jean Moss. And the name of the show was called Seriously, or What Did You Call Me? And she weaves her story into the civil rights movement and the struggle of the civil rights movement. And in doing that, she's able to open conversation at the end of the show. And so that I think what's happening more since the original Ferguson is, one, that we are conversing in our communities and we're talking to each other through stories. But still, yes, there are instances where people are still doing uprisings against those kinds of things that have happened, and it's been going on for a year. But it's a way of amplifying voice in that sense. And this is just one incident in terms of what happened yesterday, but we should look at what's happening all across the country in terms of what's being done to try to help address the problem.
Queen Noor, you know, the last time that me and you, we spoke, we said that, of course, the key word of maybe trying to solve this is education. Did you feel any change happening in the United States, coming maybe from the government, trying to give something else, to show something else about the African American community, the American African community in the United States? Did you see anything changing?
In terms of education, it's really systemic. So when you talk about, you know, racism and history being misrepresented, that is really systemic, and that would take some time. Now, for instance, we talked about President Obama last time. He actually has a movement for young men, you know, to help them and to help them identify with themselves and to help them grow in an educational perspective. Yes. But so there's different things going on in little pockets. But if you're talking about the government making systemic change, I think those are some of the things we still have to fight for, and that we have to tell our story and bring awareness to.
Yes, of course. Maybe somebody in the government is still filled with stereotype. Queen Noor, thank you very, very much for this. Thank you. And we're talking about somebody who doesn't have any stereotypes at all. Donald Trump is still trying to change the conversation after making remarks that risked alienating a huge group of voters. Women. Trump calling into the Sunday talk show is still refusing to apologize after personal attack on debate moderator Megyn Kelly. Now he's going forward with a new political team after firing a key political advisor. ABC has more.
Under fire and firing back, Donald Trump standing by insults he hurled at Fox debate moderator Megyn Kelly.
So no apologies to Megyn Kelly?
No, not at all. I said, look, she asked me a very nasty question. I have nothing against Megyn Kelly, but she asked me a very, very nasty question.
On ABC's This Week, Trump defending his comments that set off a firestorm.
Blood coming out of her, wherever.
Insisting to George he did not mean to imply anything inappropriate.
I was referring to nose, ears. They're very common statements, and only a deviant would think of what people said.
The Republican frontrunner, with a recent history of controversial comments about immigrants and American POWs, now arguing he has no problem with women.
I've always had a great relationship to the women. Women are tremendous.
The woman at the center of it all?
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs.
The first time heard defending her treatment of Trump.
You know, he felt attacked. It wasn't an attack. It was a fair question. But I get it. And he's in the arena, and so am I.
Megyn Kelly moving on as Trump's GOP rivals, sensing an opening in the race, try to do the same.
All the air in the balloon is going to Donald Trump right now.
I don't really pay any attention to these other things.
But can Trump sustain his surge? For the second time in a week, his campaign facing a major shakeup. The billionaire businessman says he fired longtime top political advisor Roger Stone. Stone claiming he fired Trump.
Who fired who? But we're not firing anyone. And with me right now is Davli, political analyst and former member of Israel Parliament Yeshatit Party. Good evening.
Good to be here, Lucy.
Yes, we just yesterday spoke about that. And Dr. Udi Zomer, Associate Professor of Political Science at the Tel Aviv University. Good evening.
Hello, Lucy.
Is it a good sign that somebody didn't fire somebody or did fire somebody a day after such a big debate and such a big controversy happening on national TV?
Well, it probably means that the Trump campaign is going through some sort of an action. Something is happening in there.
Was there a campaign?
Okay, so first of all, as far as money is concerned, okay, that's one measure, right?
Yes.
If you look at the amount of money that the Trump campaign was able to raise, it's about $1.5 million. If you compare that to the $120 million that Jeb Bush collected so far, obviously, that's not much. But I think it's interesting to think about the effects of the Trump campaign so far. So Governor Kasich talked about the oxygen in the room,
Yes.
right? And obviously the thinking was that Trump was going to take away the oxygen from the Tea Party candidates, right? From the Koch brothers candidates, people like Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio. But so far, if you look at the post-weekend polls, it seems like he's taking the air out of Jeb Bush, okay, who was supposed to be insulated. So that's interesting.
Yesterday we just sat here, and really to put a woman as a target at the beginning of your campaign, well, he tried to put McCain, and actually nobody cared, and just put him up more in the polls. But like going direct line against women, this is not going to help Hillary Clinton on the way?
Well, here's the thing. Donald Trump, first of all, it wasn't a strategy to say whatever he says.
No,
it's just whatever comes. There are the conspiracy theories out there that say he donated to Hillary in the past, and his whole candidacy is to help her, and then he'll run as an independent and help her get in. I will say this, though. Because of him, 24 million people watched the debate, and 24 million people were able to see other candidates for the first time. Yes, Trump is taking up the oxygen in the room, but Marco Rubio was able to express himself for the first time in front of an audience like this, Ted Cruz, etc. And people heard in the opening statement of the debate, the moderator say, boy, Carly earlier today really did a great job. And all of a sudden goes on Google and wants to see what Carly Fiorina said. And we're going to see those candidates rising in the polls. I personally believe that this Trump controversy will cause a hit for him, and we'll see what happens next.
I think that this big, like we're saying here in Israel, balagan, this big mess that is happening in the GOP party, this is actually making the oldest let's say, race more interesting for the Republicans, and maybe even taking the focus from the Democrats that need to put a little bit more effort into their, let's say, campaign, because who cares about what the Democrats have to say? There is a big party happening in the GOP, so let's all go there.
I think so. It's an interesting point. It's interesting to what extent this party is really encompassing, and what type of constituencies actually join the party. Okay, so Dov said rightly that there would be certain candidates that would get more attention now, right? Because 24 million people—that's a big number of people watching the debate. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, if you look at the issues, if you look at the kind of discussions that are developed in the GOP, you see how those become more and more extreme. So if you look at candidates such as Jeb Bush, or if you take the Democratic side, if you look at Hillary Clinton, those candidates have some firm policy discussions that they're trying to develop about the environment, about education policy, and about a host of other topics. Essentially, none of those topics becomes important when you look at the discussion in the GOP debate. The debate becomes around whether whether the leader of the debate was hormonal at the moment or not. So this, so in a sense, this kind of discussion, it's not clear to me whether it serves the GOP in the general elections or whether it takes the discussion in the GOP in a more extreme Tea Party direction.
Yeah, but the question is, what do these 23 million people who are watching this debate are interested in? Because it seems that Hillary Clinton just presenting a new college tuition program that will help people finance their college tuition without loans, student loans. And on the other side, she's talking about climate change, but on the other side, I don't remember anything, any of the, let's say, economic promises, something that the Republicans are promising, except from a really good show.
And the reason why we saw in the NBC poll after the debate that two candidates rose, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, is because I think out of all the candidates, they were the only ones who had any clear moment saying anything outside of all the controversy with Trump. Rubio was talking about being for the future and that he can take on Hillary Clinton because he knows what it means to be poor. Ted Cruz mentioned in one very poignant moment about having the courage to say the words fundamentalist radical Islam, and he got a big applause. Little sound bites that people could remember, and they could say, oh, I like what he said aside from the Trump content. Everybody else got lost, and that's why Bush took a hit and Walker took a hit. They're going to get lost. The question's going to be, how long can this circus continue? Because if it continues, they're not going to have the chance to get their messages out, and no one's going to be talking about any issues.
And to this circus, the media is just jumping in. We are just ready to just broadcast any of the, let's say or punchlines that Donald Trump is giving us, and we, in one way, are participating in this.
On the one hand, I mean, on the other hand, if you look at the moderators of Fox News, it was clear that they had prepared really well for the debate, and that they prepared specifically to ask Trump about his policy ideas, right? And despite the fact that they had done that, while in the debate they were unable to push him in a way that would actually generate a clear, a real policy discussion. So in that sense, I think the media is trying hard. But I think so far Trump is, he's a media champ, and he seems to be doing a good job.
Exactly this. How much of a tramp he put to Fox News, because we know that Fox News is more related to the Republican, and how much objective or fair can they actually be towards the candidates?
Well, it was interesting to see certainly Donald Trump go after these Fox News, which is generally so supportive to the Republicans. I sat there and I was almost startled. You don't expect to see that kind of attack in a Republican debate with Fox News. I don't know what's going to happen in the end with the press, but I will tell you this. The candidates that stay on message. When I was running for Knesset, they told me, in every debate, don't get caught up in the fights. Come with your 5 points, say them. Those are the ones who are going to rise to the top, and people will start to see through it. They'll see through the circus, and they'll look for the serious candidates.
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for this. And of course, we will continue talking about this for a long, long time. Yes, and we are going forward. For the first time in 11 years, South Korea is to resume border propaganda operations, retaliation for landmine blast that maimed 2 of its soldiers. Michael Friedman explains.
South Korea has blamed North Korea for sending soldiers across a heavily guarded border and planting landmines near one of the South's military guard posts, wounding 2 South Korean soldiers last week. The South Korean Defense Ministry provided a video of the explosion, and Major General Koo Hong-mo warned that North Korea would pay a harsh price.
We strongly condemn this cowardly act, which is a violation of the Armistice Agreement and a non-aggression agreement between the South and the North, and would be unthinkable for a normal military.
The 2 soldiers were part of a team conducting a routine search operation inside the heavily fortified demilitarized zone near the town of Paju when they stepped on a landmine. One soldier lost both legs in the first blast from the 2 mines, while the other soldier lost 1 leg in a second explosion as he went to help the wounded comrade. As a response, South Korea said it will resume beaming propaganda messages over the border in retaliation. The use of loudspeakers to blare government messages into North Korean territory is a form of psychological warfare that the South Korean Defense Ministry stopped more than a decade ago. Activists are already prepared to launch balloons with slogans of "Down with the Kim Jong-un hereditary dictatorship." Restarting the broadcast will certainly create more hostility among the 2 hostile neighbors. The latest events have raised the tension between the 2 nations, who are still technically at war since a truce was signed at the end of their 1950-1953 conflict, but not a peace treaty.
Now we're going back to us here in the region, and with me here is economist Dr. Ramzi Halabi. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure.
So, Dr. Halabi, let's try to, we want to talk today about the Israeli anti-drug authority that is closing. What does it mean for Israel? Is it more money for other departments in the police units, or does it mean that people who use, let's say, drugs or legal drugs can relax now?
Yeah, first of all, the Ministry of Finance decided after 27 years of establishment of this authority to close it. And the official reason is to cut the budget of the Ministry of Public Services or Security. But there's and to save maybe about 20 million shekels annually. But this is
20 million shekels annually. This is
it's
not
small money.
It's a small
actually.
amount of money if
Yes.
we're talking about the finance ministry.
Yes, that is the reason that some publications argue that there's another reasons. One of them is the investigation and the against the CEO of this authority, Yair Geller, part of all the issue of Israel Beitenu. And the other reason is that this kind of campaign of the authority against the cannabis, you talked about that. So it's
legal drug.
It's not the right time to do that, because the Ministry of Health now going to start a process of legalization of the cannabis.
You know, exactly from this, I'm trying to connect this to that. If maybe the health ministry and the finance ministry maybe agreed about something, and maybe this move is going to give more money to legalize, let's say, cannabis, for example.
Yeah, I think that this is some cooperation between these two ministers, but outside the decision and outside the involvement is the Ministry of Public Security, and it's very strange for me. But you know, I want to tell you another thing. As a former mayor of Dalat el-Carmel and a person who is involved in the activities in the society, I'm worried about this decision. You know why? Because I think maybe we can save 20 million shekels every year, but we may it may cost us much more, because you know maybe the use of the youth of the drugs, the behavior, the social behavior.
This can give us and put us in another discussion. But for this discussion, especially about using drugs, we will bring you another time. Thank you for now, Mr. Ramzi Halabi. Thank you very, very much. And we're going to China. Typhoon Soudelor landed in Taiwan and East China 2 days ago with torrential rains and strong winds, and has left muddy drinking water, severe damage, and several deaths in its wake. It's now been downgraded to a tropical rainstorm. Michael Friedman has the latest.
Typhoon Soudelor has killed at least 21 people in China and Taiwan and left many others missing. Rescue efforts continue after the typhoon battered Taiwan with fierce winds and rain. Residents have been trapped in their homes pending a large-scale emergency operation. Soudelor made landfall on the island's east coast counties of Yilan and Hualien, bringing up to 1,000 millimeters of rain and winds gusting up to 200 kilometers per hour. Millions of households were reported without power, with train services suspended or canceled. Most local governments across Taiwan also announced the closure of businesses and schools due to the storm. China has also been working towards a major cleanup undertaking in the eastern provinces of Zhejiang and Fujian after Typhoon Soudelor hit. With life at a standstill, some vehicles have also been floating in the streets.
When I was driving my car through, I saw 1 or 2 cars stuck in the middle of the water. Possibly because my car is quite high, I was able to force myself through.
With many parts of China submerged and the death toll rising, this horrific storm is leaving rescuers struggling to save lives. Typhoons are common at this time of the year in the South China Sea and Pacific, but Soudelor has been called the worst storm of the year.
And right now with me here in the studio, someone who's not singing any songs at all. It's Jonathan Reagan.
Why not singing any song?
Because you should not sing.
Because things are made of glass, that's what you're saying?
Yes.
I think you're right.
All this channel is transparent and made of glasses. You should not sing.
Sing in your heart.
Yes, just keep it inside. Just digest it.
What do you mean? You mean I don't sing so well?
No.
Yes.
Let's talk about Rio.
Yes. Speak about stuff you do know something about. Rio, we always speak of the Guanabara Bay as the biggest health concern for Rio organizers. Now there's another one. The equestrian events, test equestrian events were held this weekend. But there was a talk that they should be canceled because 2 of the 500 horses that the Brazilian Academy holds there were found positive for horse disease, which is a rare and yet very contagious disease. and all the other 500 horses that are kept there, their samples were taken, but the results will only be found out in October, in 2 months' time. So people were afraid that spectators coming could also be some way contact the disease, and it may be a problem. The test event ended, everything was fine. But it also adds another headache to the concern of Rio Health Organization with a bay, with other concerns. Less than a year away, a lot to prepare.
Work on.
Absolutely.
Yes. And from one race to another, MotoGP.
MotoGP, yes. After a 4 weeks break, the event returned in the United States. And Marc Marquez, the Spanish rider, he won for the third time in a row. He is the world champion. He won the world championship the last 2 years. But he started the season in a terrible fashion, and he's way behind. But he has won 3 races in a row. He's now 56 points behind leader Valentino Rossi in the overall standings. Will it be enough to climb back and again in some heroic way win the title for a third time in a row? Doubtful. Valentino Rossi is way too experienced for that, and yet it may happen. It may happen. Marc Marquez.
Like that.
Yes.
Oh,
He's
really?
22 years old, by the way. 93. 93 is the year he was born, Marc Marquez.
Did you see my moves on a motorcycle?
No.
Because I don't ride a motorcycle.
Do I want to see your moves on a
No.
No. Oh, I'll sing and you'll...
I'll
Yes.
Another race.
Something which can happen only in Australia. City to Surf, it's called, from downtown Sydney to Bondi Beach. Now, people run fast, it's true, but it seems like the thing here was not who gets to the finish line at Bondi Beach first, but who has the nicest costume and dress. First 80,000 people participated, and we see the route is beautiful from downtown Sydney to Bondi Beach, but people were dressed in all kinds of costumes. As we can see, this beautiful, cute lion that we have there. We had Wonder Women, there they are, Wonder Woman!
So they were racing because they were like why?
Because it's
isn't it hot enough and like
no first it's winter in Sydney, so but yet it's winter, but yet there were zebras and lions and Wonder Women and
it's very typical for us Israelis that I'm saying, isn't it hot because we think that we're the center of the world?
Of course, and plus it's hot here, even in winter it's hot. So.
Yeah, it's just like,
but it's a place where with normal weather.
Do you want to end this by singing
Wonder Woman? I already did it. Cha-ching! She had these things, right? The bracelets.
For the next X Factor or American Idol or
Take
whatever,
me now,
Jonathan Reagan.
Sure.
Ding, ding, ding. I will.
Absolutely. Turn around for me.
I will turn around for you. Jonathan Reagan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you.
Yes, and we're going out for a small break to an update from our news desk. We will sing, you will see news, and we'll be back for the third part of the news today. Don't go anywhere. Back to the news today. In Israel, Daniela Weiss is known as one of the leaders of the extreme right-wing settlers. This week, she said in Israeli media that President Reuven Rivlin is not important enough to kill. A statement in response to the president's condemnation of the arson attack, which left a toddler and his father dead in the village of Duma. She also said that there should be a difference in punishment laws between Jewish and Arab terrorists. It all brings up the question, what are the limits in democracy when it is free speech by law and when it is incitement? To understand and talk a little bit about this is Ari Briggs here with me, Director of Regavim Zionist Organization. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks.
And also Yariv Oppenheimer, General Director of Peace Now. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for coming. Gentlemen, I will give both of you the same question. We are living in a democracy. Freedom of speech is one of, let's say, the milestones of a democracy. Maybe there shouldn't be a limit to freedom of speech. Maybe each and every person in a democratic country should be able to say whatever he wants or she wants. Who wants to start?
Definitely there should be a limitation for freedom of speech. There is a criminal law in Israel that is saying, and I agree with that, that if you are using incitement in order to encourage hurting other people and killing other people, so this is a criminal act, and also against racism. If you are calling for racist remarks or racist speeches, then you are breaking the law. I agree with that. The big question is here is how to interpret the law and whether the law should be enforced in this kind of cases. I believe that freedom of speech should be very big and wide, but still, when you got in a position in which people are saying that Arabs should deal different than Jewish, when people are saying that racism is something that they can accept, here we should think about doing things and not just letting it be there.
So there are typical examples. Calling out fire in a theater is illegal in most democratic countries because even though you have the right of free speech, this is damaging. But the difficult part here is that we see the examples used by Yariv. It's only racism, it's only against Arabs. What we see here is free speech for the protected minority, and the majority is unable to say, you know, there are lots of limits. So
give me an example.
I'll give you an example. Incitement against a whole class of people, like what we saw recently after the terrible and horrific firebombing of a home and the death of a baby and his father, the incitement against a whole group of people without an outcry against that incitement. First of all, we are a land of rules, laws, as Yariv said, and we have a court system that either finds people guilty or not guilty. However, a large chunk of this country found a large segment, the religious Zionist segment, guilty of this crime. No one has been charged, no one has been caught, no one has this. From the top down, people said Jewish terrorism without even a suspect.
So what would you call it if not Jewish terrorism? Because there is Arab terrorism, there is Muslim terrorism.
What we're talking about here is freedom of speech. Can a segment, a sector in society be branded as having brought about Jewish terrorism?
Segment, but this is not a segment.
It's a sector.
When you're saying Jewish terrorism, it's like you're saying Arab terrorism or Muslim terrorism.
What I'm talking about was the incitement against religious Zionist Jews, or if you want to say all those Jews, 400,000 Jews living in Judea and Samaria, that they had something to do with this terrible act, even though not one suspect has been found. So there is a problem with freedom of speech in this case.
But I think that even when we are saying here, we're saying extreme right-wing settlers. We're not saying the settlers who are living in Judea and Samaria or the West Bank.
But I think that we need to make the definition between incitement and criticism. There are people that believe that under the Jewish settler movement, this kind of phenomenon of Jewish terrorism, extreme Jewish terrorism, is rising up again and again. And I believe that not only the Israeli society should think about it, but also the Zionist the Zionist movement, the settler movement, need to think how come this phenomenon is coming out of the settlements. So I think that it's okay to criticize, and even if the criticism is very difficult, and even if I cannot accept everything that is being said in the left, it's still legal. What we are seeing here in many cases, that it's not a criticism. What we see from the Le'ava people, from the extreme white people, we are seeing racist expressions of anti-Muslims, anti-Arab. Everything that is not Jewish is false, and we should not just criticize the Arabs or the Muslims, we should act against them sometime with violence.
And I'm sure you
agree.
agree.
And the Christian as well, by the way.
I'm sure you agree that you see it on the other side. But what isn't said is that you don't come out against those people who say, well, Jews shouldn't live here, Jews should be cleaned from here, they shouldn't deserve to be here. I mean, this is also racism.
For sure,
I mean, you have to come out on both sides. You see, incitement is not related to the word insightful.
But
two totally different words.
We're looking inside the Israeli society. We're not looking at the Palestinian society. Let's put it out loud. We don't care about the Palestinian society.
We all live together in this country.
You know,
we are not living together in this country. The Palestinians are living in the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, and people are living in Judea and Samaria. Call it West Bank, call it Judea and Samaria. But these are not people who are living in the same buildings, that are living in the same houses, and these are not the same societies.
This is probably the problem. That's part of the problem.
Maybe, but
I know I passed many more white and green number plates today than I did yellow number plates
where I was. But do you want to measure
your
morals to the Palestinian morals?
equal application of the law, equal laws in terms of incitement, in terms of racism, in terms... Again, we have a protected minority here that is protected by people using terminology like boundaries on democracy, like incitement against, again, these important sectors of the...
So if we're talking equality, so if somebody, a Jewish man, is getting into a house in Duma, for example, and burning the house, his house should be
demolished. And he should be thrown in jail and the key thrown away. There's no question, equal application of the law, no difference in Jews and Arabs. But I expect the same as I'm able to say that, so should Yariv say it on the other side.
But first of all, I don't think that destroying the houses of the family of a murderer, either it's Palestinian or Jewish, is the right thing to do. It's not helpful even to prevent terror, but this is not the issue. I believe that we cannot deal equally with the Palestinian and the Israelis for one single reason. The Palestinians are not citizens of Israel. They are not the one to be vote and to make the decision where their country is going and what is the law. And because of that, you know, when the Jewish people here before we had the state, that we all fight the British. No one said that we are fighting the British because we want to see Israel out of British people because we are racist. We have racist approach to the British. People understood that we are fighting in order to get our rights.
How the Jews fought the British than how the Palestinian terrorism fights the Jews.
The Palestinian, I'm not justifying anything, but I think that there are some similarities. And when the Palestinians are fighting in order to have independence, so they are not doing it because they are racist against Israelis. They are doing it because they want their own
when they had their area occupied by Jordan, I didn't see them fighting Jordan.
Today we are occupying
but I didn't see them fighting Jordan. So this is all part of the bigger Arab-Israeli conflict.
I want to take it to another level, because let's take it to the media, for example, level. Because we are talking about incitement, we are talking about extreme people, and I'm wondering, because we are in the media also sometimes are playing this game, and I want to ask you, do you think that maybe in the media we should give the stage to people like Daniel Weiss, like Bentzi Gottstein from Lehava, like people from the extreme right to come here to the studio and express their mind and to say what they have to say, because this is a democratic country? Or we should put a limit to this and say, you know what, I can say what you're saying, but I'm not giving you the stage.
It's a big question, but I have to say that I'm not so sure it's so relevant anymore today because of the social media, because of the new ways of people to reach out for their people, and people can express their view not in the just mass media, but I think that it's important to show them and even to give them the stage in order to be able to confront what we are standing in front.
I think it's better that people can say what they believe and be damned for it. Take another example, Obama. President Obama cannot stand on television and talk about Islamic terrorism. Or he talks, you know, straight away, Jewish terrorism, Arab terrorism. This is all the press in Israel. But the President of the United States can't stand up and call Islamic terrorists.
No, but I will tell you why. When you're saying Jewish terrorism, it used to be only terror. And when we used to say terror, usually in the Israeli society, you would directly take it to Arabs, because Arab equals terrorist, usually. You know, it's usually like that. When you're hearing about terror, you will imagine, unfortunately, an Arab man, you won't imagine a Jewish man. Maybe putting the emphasis on Jewish terrorism, and then to go back maybe to the basis, to say terror is terror.
If you play the numbers game, it doesn't work out anyway. I mean, now it's so trendy to talk about Jewish terrorism, but just chart them. Talk about it again.
No, but we don't want
we're not in competition,
for sure not. And we should never be.
And also, by the way, I think this is an Israeli interest. If you really care for Israeli morality, for the Israeli society, even the chance to have some time maybe peace within the Israeli society, so this is also your interest to be very, very tough with this phenomenon of extreme Jewish Israelis that are doing things that should not be done.
More vigilant than against Arab terrorism? Why? It's equal. Again, you have such a low feeling about
for our people.
The Arabs and Palestinians that you shouldn't expect them to be on the same moral and ethic level. No, I think it's wrong that you say they should be on a different level. Don't see them as a lower level than you are.
Let me take just
that's why you say their morals and ethics should be different from ours. They should be the same as ours.
Let me try to take this side of the table, because you know, a lot of criticism is targeted towards the left in Israel, that when somebody from the left is saying something, it's a has a peaceful meeting, although it's racist, although it has some sort of incitement, or it is incitement. But when somebody from the right is saying it, it is racist. It is incitement. So maybe also the left should look at itself and say, oh, whoa, maybe we're looking also at things in a different way.
I think it's racist and the lower expectation of Arabs, like we just heard from Yariv.
There is no law of expectation,
same
but there is
morals,
an
same
understanding
ethics.
about the reason and the motivation of the Arab to incite against Israelis. But I don't want to be nice and to answer the nice answer that left and rights are the same, because they are not the same. In the Israeli law, there is a very clear sentence that says that people that are calling for violent act, the reason why you can be charged against them is if there is a good chance that something will happen. And when we see through the history, we see that from the right wing, from the religious, extreme, powerful attitude, from that place, we see the murders, we see the people that killed the prime minister. We see that it's coming from that place.
The numbers are so small.
We didn't see it coming. We didn't see it coming
the
from the
statistical
left.
error is larger than the number of total.
Because it contradicts the values of the peace camp. It's not by accident. The values of the peace camp in Israel is not to kill people.
But why you are the
this
peace
is part
camp
of the bigotry.
and they are the war camp. And I will take this side now, and I will say again, this is not. Again, you will see all. Even if you're talking, these are minor numbers. These are small numbers. But this minority is doing a lot of noise. This minority is doing a lot of damage. And this minority is actually murdering people. So, you know, it's exactly like the Muslim world will say, well, Daesh.
How can you? I mean, this is pure bigotry. He says and no one stops anything. The values of the liberal left are on a higher level than the values of the religious right or the right in itself. No, he didn't say that. He said the liberal left, the left versus the right. I mean, come on, this is not racism. This is bigotry.
Exactly. That the values of the peace camp is not to kill and hurt innocent civilians, and this is the reason why even when there are right-wing
the policies of the left leads to thousands of deaths. You're talking about two terrible things that happen, but the values of the left lead to thousands and thousands and thousands of deaths. So don't talk to me about values. You can't take a micro example. You have to take the macro example.
And the Palestinian terrorists in the same
not at
place.
all. It's the policies of the peace camp that lead to thousands.
I'm saying that the occupation
Oslo,
is
how many people died in the Oslo wars?
The people died before Oslo as well, and without Oslo, I think we will be still in another intifada. So, you know, this is about the policies. But if you talk about the values and the outcome, I cannot just make the reality nice and to say, it's both sides. No, there is a difference. The right-wing extremists are saying that the Israelis and the Jewish people has more rights than the minorities, and we have the land for ourselves. It's okay to occupy, and people are taking it even one step further and saying it's okay to take other people land. It's okay to burn olive trees and to cut olive trees, and eventually it's okay to burn a family when they are sleeping.
And the value.
And I think that this kind of values you will not see in the peace camp, and this is why the right wing should be much more careful with what they are saying, because the outcome
and in
is
the right
very,
wing is a lot more
difficult.
careful. But the claim to ethnically cleanse Jews, 400,000 Jews from Judea and Samaria, this is the lowest possible value that exists. This is talking about ethnically cleansing Jews. So don't talk to me about values. The values of the liberal left
of the state
bankrupt.
Gentlemen, maybe the values should be united, and we both, all of us, should be worried about stop the incitement in the Israeli society against each other. Thank you very, very much for coming to the studio. That's it for tonight. Tomorrow we will be here at the same time, same place from the Jaffa Port, Israel. Have peace. Have a great night.